I just have to recognize a point that's been made over and over again, which is that people's tolerance goes down, they get out of jail, and then it increases death rates. Let me make very clear that every hit can be deadly. And so that is a, that has to be recognized, that what is being said is a problem. I recognize the science behind it, of course, but let's not discount the fact that people are dying every day, whether or not they're coming out of jail. All right. So I also want to address some of Councilmember Mosqueda's points about the fiscal impacts, because we did, as I said before, get an email from City Attorney Davison, and I think that it's only respectful to read into the record what she says about some of these costs that have been mentioned in the past. So she says, I have heard some wild speculation about how many cases might be sent to the city attorney's office and the costs of handling those cases. These are unsubstantiated scare tactics. This law would be a modest but important tool in the toolbox for police and prosecutors as we confront the unprecedented growth of fentanyl and methamphetamine on our streets. When Seattle conforms to state law, my office will work in collaboration with the Seattle Police Department and diversion partners. Neither is it in my office's interest to overwhelm our prosecutors or the Seattle Municipal Court. We will work with our partners to determine which referrals we can route to diversion and treatment. And passage of this law does not change the fact that the King County Jail will not book for drug possession or use. As a result, I expect both the costs and the impacts of the law to be modest. All right, so just wanted to get that on the record as food for thought. So we're going to have to agree to disagree about the analogy between this legislation and the war on drugs, because I believe that equating this legislation to the war on drugs is frankly to diminish and minimize the damages and the heinousness of that stain on our history. Those were felonies. People were thrown into jail for years on felony charges having to do primarily with cannabis and coke and crack and heroin, et cetera. We're talking gross misdemeanor to address the most potent and dangerous drug to hit our streets ever. I mean, let's recognize that. And I remind people, jail is not the goal. The goal is treatment, whether or not you believe me or Councilmember Peterson or the author of this bill. In fact, I have to say very sincerely that we actually are trying to develop a tool and a system to get more people into treatment. So here's a graph that shows, please don't yell. So this is the trend from, I think it was 2013 to 2022. This is top line is Seattle. That is that's the increase of overdose fatalities, and the top of that graph represents from 2022, 589 deaths in Seattle. And this year the death toll already from overdoses in Seattle is about 350 already this year so far. So we are talking about real lives. And so when I hear that, we don't really mean we're not really serious about treatment, or when we disrespectfully try to say that, imply that the author of this bill is pretty much not telling the truth and she actually plans to do something else, that is that's not recognizing that we have to do something. And I look around and I see what's going on our streets, and I see that our existing interventions aren't really working. And so say what you will about the war on drugs. I do believe that there is no equivalence. And we're talking about a piece of legislation to conform with state law just to do something else. The only solution I heard today offered was scale up existing services. Not to insult existing services, but when is it ever going to be enough to address the lives that are being lost right now? And I think that I heard Councilmember Herbold say something about, 50% of people relapse and, voluntarily. And so what good is mandatory relapse going to do? I mean, mandatory treatment, I'll tell you what it's going to do. It is going to save lives. And it's shocking to hear that discounted, that even mandatory treatment is not to be even tried. So anyway, I'm just trying to gather my thoughts because, you know, this discussion didn't go the way I thought it was. But I know you win some, you lose some. But the point is that we have to do something different here. And please
let Councilmember Nelson speak like we gave the courtesy to the other council members to speak. Go ahead, Councilmember Nelson.
Back to the war on drugs, it's clear that treatment and funding programs, as this piece of legislation does, 48 pages, most of it is dedicated to where the money is going to come from. Seattle will get some of that money, and our partners will receive it. But the point is that it is time to try something that will make a difference in addition to everything that we're doing now. It is not either or, it is both. It is all of the above. This is a crisis. And if you basically are calling this a war on drugs because you essentially want to decriminalize drugs, that's fine. You should just be honest and say that and vote no on this.
You should be honest.
And
can we just not?
Because the effective decriminalization post-Blake is going to persist. And so I'll just close by noting that there is, despite what we've heard in this room, I do think, out of respect, I have to mention that there is broad community support for this legislation. We did receive a letter from a broad coalition of 18 community organizations from across the city of Seattle, including the Seattle Building Trades, GSBA, the Fremont Chamber, Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce, Downtown Seattle Association, the Ballard Alliance, North Seattle Industrial Association, Fremont Dock Company, First Hill Improvement Association, NAIOP, Seattle Hotel Association, The Junction, West Seattle, Seattle Restaurant Alliance, the Associated General Contractors of Washington, the National Nordic Museum, Chinatown International District Business Improvement Area, Alliance for Pioneer Square. These organizations represent workers, members, residents, businesses across our city. Why? Because they are fed up with the city's inaction. So I would urge my colleagues to vote. That rings a little hollow at this point, but I do have to say that I am disappointed in this outcome, but there's still a chance. One could change your mind after this scintillating speech and vote yes. I ask you to do so, but in any case, thank you very much for your attention to this matter, because we do have to start talking about this much more seriously and much more often.